Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode. Hello, Tender Wild podcast listeners. We are thrilled to have a guest back today. And we informed him that he is one of the few men that we've had on our podcast. And this is his second visit with us. And so we are
the only one we've had a second
the
date.
only man we've asked back for a second time. So we are thrilled today to have Shannon Algeo, who is a psychotherapist, public speaker, meditation teacher, author of Trust Your Truth, and his new book, The Power in Your Hands, Liberate Yourself from Attachment to Technology, which we are so excited to get into today with Shannon. Shannon is known and loved by millions of people around the world for sharing his life experiences in ways that land in the hearts, minds, and bodies of individuals who are seeking to learn, grow, deepen, and heal. His popular podcast, Soul Feed, features interviews with iconic cultural leaders like Deepak Chopra, who's my meditation teacher, Marianne Williamson, who we've had on twice. She's another twofer on this podcast. We love her. And Shannon's also interviewed Sonia Renee Taylor. So some really big, beautiful people that he's been able to speak with. As a therapist, Shannon works with clients to heal patterns of trauma so they can show up in the world with power, presence, and purpose. And this is a big one. He was named one of the 35 under 35 in Wellness to Watch by Wonderlust. So we are just thrilled to have another deep and meaningful conversation with you today, Shannon. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And now I'm 39, so 35 under 35. Hopefully,
you're maturing into even more wisdom, I think.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you both so much for having me back on Tend Her Wild. I remember our conversation from a few years ago. We were just talking about 3 years ago, and I so loved that conversation. And as I was coming out of my writing cave and thinking about who do I want to talk to about this book and this journey and this work, you both came to mind because you were really two of the first people who I spoke to about this topic 3 years ago. So thank you for having me back. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot to us. And we loved hearing from you and being able to read your book and see we're kind of there when you were thinking about it, and then to see it come to light is great. So you know how we like to start, and we talked about this before we jumped on with you, and we would like to remind listeners just about your first 10 years, because I'm going to guess there's a little connection to your current work somewhere in that first 10 years. So tell us about growing up, just a little summary of maybe some of the highlights so we remember those things.
Yes, thank you for asking me this question again. I love this question. And it's making me think of an exercise that I both did and facilitated at the Esalen workshop, where we go offline for 5 days together. And it's an offline, collective offline ritual in nature. And one of the exercises that I guide people through is about connecting to the inner spark of the inner child, like that creative spark, that creative curiosity, that wonder of the inner child. And as I did this exercise with the participants, we were all journaling. And what came up for me was remembering the first time I went into a forest alone as a kid in this park by my house. And there was a river, and it had this real sense of wildness. And I remember as a kid, I went a little bit deeper into the forest than I had ever gone before. And I was alone. Yeah. And then I went a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And I remember feeling this sense of of personal connection to this forest and the river. And I got down on the earth, and I remember the earth felt like this clay, this like, it was like a putty kind of clay, must have been really kind of like hydrated by the nearby water sources. And then, like, misty Maryland trees towering overhead, the sound of water nearby, the quiet of the forest. And I felt so personally connected to this place. And yet I didn't feel alone at all. Like I was not around any other humans, but I felt so surrounded by nature and the trees. And as I was reflecting on what are the things that brought me the most joy as a child, what are the things that gave me a spark of wonder and curiosity, it was like this simple memory of, I must have been 7, maybe 8. And then the other things that came to mind were riding my bike. I still love riding my bike. And as a kid, that was just such a, like, there's something so rhythmic and soothing about pedal strokes and tires on concrete and moving the body and feeling the wind on your face. And that's something that's really carried with me through adulthood, is just kind of like late summer nights outside biking with my sister as a kid. And we even do it now when we go home to our parents' house in Delaware. We'll go on these like sunset twilight bike rides, and we'll just talk and talk and talk. And then the other thing was singing. That in my first 10 years of life, singing was such a big part of my Irish Catholic family. And my dad in particular, he was the song keeper of our family. So he played the guitar, his 12-string Guild guitar, at all family events. It could be a christening, it could be a funeral, it could be a wedding, it could be just having the crack in Philadelphia around an Irish Catholic table until the wee hours of the morning, but just songs filling the house and singing together and singing Irish songs, singing John Denver, rock and roll. And so that, those are like the tenets of my 10 years, of like nature and biking and music. And when I'm feeling lost and I don't know where to go, or I'm feeling the despair of digitization, kind of stuck on my phone scrolling, it's so refreshing to remember how simple the things are that actually nourish my soul and bring me back to that spark. So thank you for starting with that question, because in this conversation, it can be so easy kind of to jump into the muck of the digital conversation, and then this kind of will come somewhere towards the end. But I love this question because you're bringing the inner child right to the fore.
Well, can I just say that story picture, or the story about you being in the forest? I see that in your cover, in your book cover. That is you. So
And Shannon, as you were
wow,
telling about your first 10 years in such a beautiful poetic way, because of course you're a poet as well, I thought, this is why he's on a second time, because what he's describing right now is rewilding, right? That return to nature, to essence, to truth, to the body. I mean, we're all rewilding, no matter our gender, no matter how we identify. And so just what you described in those first 10 years is all about rewilding. And that's what I think as adults, we're trying to get back to.
inner spark.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes. The rewilding, the remembering our inner wilderness, the wildness within.
Yeah. The truth in us. Yeah. And so we know that a little bit of your story, that there came a point. And would you be considered a technology native, meaning that your age, did you have technology even as a young kid? Do you remember that? I mean, we're old enough that we didn't, but
I had a foot in both worlds, because we didn't get AOL, dial-up, and instant messenger until I was 11.
Okay.
So, and even then, my adolescence was a dial-up. Like you had to, and we only had one phone line. So if my mom was on the phone, I couldn't get online. So there was substantial friction. But we didn't get a computer until I was 11 years old in 6th grade.
Okay. Okay. So you are sort of a bridge. But it sounds like there came a point in your life where you had sort of lost the power of those first 10 years, nature and music. You were finding yourself pulled into your phone, but knowing yourself well enough that it didn't quite feel right. You give an example of you're in your kitchen chopping vegetables, trying to prepare your meal, and you're getting totally off course by all the beeps and bongs on the phone. So, can you tell us when you sort of realized, like, oh, I'm not in right relationship with this and I want to do something different?
Yeah, it was a series of years of denial and sobriety, of like pretending this is not an issue because of how normalized smartphone use had become in my life and our lives. So it was a lot of like, this isn't a problem. Everyone's doing this. This is just like being alive now.
Mhm.
And the normalization making the addiction invisible to me, and then periods of deep suffering and realization that my psyche had been co-opted and was just diminished and distracted, that my creative capacity wasn't being fulfilled to the potential that it could be, and then the soul suffering underneath that. I
Yeah.
love one of my professors at Pacifica, which is a depth Jungian school, where I did my graduate school studies, talks about psychopathology as the study of the suffering of the soul. That psyche is soul, pathos is the suffering of, and ology is the study of the suffering of the soul. And so feeling my soul suffering from spending 5, 6, 7, up to 8 hours a day tethered to technology, which is average. Average smartphone user spends 5 to 8 hours a day on their phone. It amounts to 61 to 80 days every year in total, 2 to 3 months. And so I started to feel these, like, usually, to bring this back to creativity, usually almost always my creative practice and my creative desires, that inner spark, has saved me, because I had a creative project like my first book, Trust Your Truth, or this book, The Power in Your Hands, or even a poem that I want to write. And then when I have that creative curiosity, but then I'm spending all this time on my phone and I can't get to the creative task, I can't get that quality of presence to build, to tend to the wildness of the creative longing, to go and make the thing, to go write the book, to go write poetry, to go be in that artistic mind. And I just felt more and more. And the trash trucks are here, so everyone listening, you can know that this is not an AI generated
That's so true.
conversation
But we
where
can't hear it too much.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's all
okay.
good.
This is how all those things now become signs and codes that
It's real.
Betsy and Kate and Shannon are here, and we're real.
We're real
We're really
people.
doing this, y'all.
Real humans.
Yeah.
But I started to really feel a pain and a grief and a despair of like, oh, I am not practicing my creative practice. And I want to, and I need to. So what do I need to do to reorganize my life, to reckon with this attachment to my device, to face these addictive compulsive tendencies that are playing out in my body and impacting my time? And how do I do what Catherine O'Hara, the late great Catherine O'Hara, talks about?
Mr.
Rest
Already.
in peace. Yeah.
Totally, like, feel she was like my TV mom, and for so many of us.
Yeah.
And she talks about, if you find your gift, if you're lucky enough in this life to find your gift, you must nurture and protect it at all costs. You must go to great lengths to nurture and protect your gift.
Well, what I love most about this book is that you have walked the walk and now you're sharing your story with us. Not even one of the reviews, not with judgment, But when I read this, I felt like he's not judging us for our phone use. He's simply enlightening us about what's underneath all of that and what
Mm.
the costs are to our lives and to our creativity. And so you do it in such a beautiful way that keeps people reading, if that makes sense. It's like I'm
Mm.
not shutting it because he's
Shaming me
yeah,
into,
punishing me for it.
yeah.
To me, there were so many aha moments. And one of the biggest one is this idea of attachment styles and what's underneath that for people that are anxious or have certain attachment styles are even more prone to that. So can you talk to us about what you've learned about that and why that's such a critical piece of understanding our phone use?
Yes, yes, such a good question. And I'm so delighted to hear that you experienced that kind of non-shaming approach. And that's why I felt like it was so important to talk about my own relationship with my phone so that I didn't somehow put myself on a pedestal of like, let me tell you, about your problem, but rather to join with the reader and say, yeah, like this is a societal addiction and this impacts all of us, and it impacts all of us uniquely and personally based on our own life circumstances, relationships that we have or don't have in our lives, attachment relationships from our developmental childhood is what the research shows. And so that's where, it can be so easy with any addiction, but especially with an addiction that we carry around with us almost all day long, to look at it as a behavioral addiction or as a dopamine addiction, or to look at how it's impacting our memory or attention spans. That can all be important to understand, but it can sometimes quickly resort or result in this self-beating, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this together? I need to overcome this addiction. I need to kind of take this on myself. And what I love about the attachment research that has emerged in the last 6, 7+ years is that it invites this deeper inquiry of how is my phone acting as a surrogate attachment caregiver? And I'm reaching to my phone for a sense of soothing and safety and security and stability. I'm reaching to my phone to feel seen by those likes on Instagram or the DMs that are coming in or the response from the guy on the dating app. I want to feel seen. I want to feel soothed. I want to feel safe. I want to feel secure. Those are human needs. So how dare I? Why would I shame myself for having those needs? And yet I need to soberly, to be sober is to see. I need to see how me reaching for the phone is impacting my psyche, my relationship with myself, my relationship with creativity, my relationship with other human beings. And so when I was learning about attachment theory in school, I kept having this thought, this kind of sense, this intuition, this gut. I feel like I'm in an attachment relationship with my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started to wonder about that. Like, oh, like is this acting as a caregiver, like kind of waking me up in the morning? Good morning, Shannon. Look, people love you. Look, there's things to see online. Look, check the news. Check the news. Is the world safe? Check my texts. Are my parents safe? The pandemic exacerbated this majorly. The reaching for the phone as a source of, am I okay? To answer that question, am I okay? Are we okay?
Yeah.
And then at night, scrolling, numbing, kind of putting me to bed at night, helping me check out, and then I started with my research question. My task was to dig up and find and see, are there any studies linking attachment styles to compulsive smartphone use? And that's when I was like, oh my God, this isn't just a thought I'm having. This is actually, there are multiple studies. And now that it's 2026, there's a meta-analysis of over 11,000 cases correlating insecure attachment styles with compulsive and problematic smartphone use. Because as Nikki Meyer says, and I quote her in the book, Nikki Myers says addiction is the disease of the lost self. And anytime I reach outside of myself for something that can only be sourced from the inside, from inside of me, I risk forming an addictive relationship with whatever that thing is. And so this is why we don't need to shame ourselves. We need to love ourselves and have compassion for what we're reaching for, and then start to question the devices, the technologies, the corporations that are exploiting that human vulnerability of attachment, because we do need each other and we are socially wired for connection.
We do.
And that's why these phones are playing into exploiting that vulnerability. And yeah.
And with AI right now, I think the timing of this is so critical, because robots will never be humans. They just won't.
No, but people are using them as their best friend and their therapist and their date. And I think, again, I believe the timing of this book is pretty impeccable, Shannon. I want to ask you about, this ties in very much to your story of smartphone use. You describe yourself as a recovering influencer.
Mm-hmm.
So you were I love this, because you were part of one of the early influencers. You're a young person, you get millions of hits, you have all these people liking your post. And yet you describe how no matter how many people would like your post, there was still a loneliness, because these aren't real relationships. People aren't really connected to you. They're just liking something you've posted. And I have adolescents. I have 3 children. And so I also want to follow up with a question about adolescence and smartphone use. But I hear kids in their generation saying, I want to become an influencer. Like, this is an actual job. I want to be an influencer. So will you talk about the highs and the lows of that, and why you consider yourself now a recovered influencer? And then maybe take it into adolescence connection to this new technology.
Yeah. As you're asking that question, it is bringing up the memory of being an effeminate, kind of queer, quirky boy in a Catholic school where boys are supposed to play football and hang out with the boys, and girls are supposed to dig by the dirt and the trees and play games that are more kind of like social and fun and free or whatever. But I was always friends with the girls, and I really got along with my friend Kate and Kristen and Paula, and those were just my friends, and that was natural for me. And there was a great cost to sitting at the girls' table for lunch, and I was often bullied and called, the F word and queer and gay, and as a young child. And so I think about those formative years of being different, of being targeted, of being seen in a negative light for some reason that I have no control over, and is just kind of because of my nature, who I am. And then I think about, fast forward, I am 22 in New York City, and Instagram is now a thing. And suddenly there's tens of thousands of people following me. And suddenly I'm sitting down with Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra, and there's millions of downloads on our podcast. And just this wound, or this hole in my sense of self that felt bad or broken or just somehow fundamentally wrong, that I would be bullied at 5 or 6 years old for just being me. Now there's this counter energy of being seen and celebrated and liked. And then that is this high that is indescribable, to be new and noteworthy on Apple Podcasts for months, to have this kind of in my 20s, I was really feeling the bigness of all of that. And there's shadow and light to that journey, because on one hand, it healed that part of myself that felt like I have nothing to share. I have nothing to say. I'm worthless. Why would someone want to listen to me? All of these deep insecurities were kind of like disproven by the success. And also, it's an insatiable addiction to the next post and the next podcast and the next guest and the next, like, kind of getting this thing from outside of me in order to compensate for this deficiency or sense of worthlessness inside of me. And so this opportunity that the internet and social media has created for the rise of the influencer corresponds with human psychology that has been in development for hundreds of thousands, millions of years, which is we have this part of ourselves that is the persona. We create a persona, and that persona is what we project out into the world based on our need for survival. So I'm going to project the things that I think are going to win me approval and reward and keep me safe in the tribe. I'm going to reflect the values of my community so that my community doesn't disown me. And if I don't do that, I'm taking a great risk. And then the shadow is in direct relationship with that persona, because the shadow is the part of ourselves that we exile and say, do not show that part of yourself. You will not get love there. That is disgusting. That is gross. That is not me. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing up the persona and the shadow is the e-persona, which is that there's a psychiatrist, Elias, and I would butcher his last name if I tried to say it right now, but it starts with an A, and he's a brilliant writer, and he writes about the e-personality and the e-persona, and this ability that, or this opportunity that social media has created for influencers to project a sense of self into a digital domain where there's this kind of like identity management. Now, if you think about what is the difference between an e-persona and an actual persona? Well, if I'm in relationship with you, Betsy, and you, Kate, and we, like, let's say we see each other every week and we catch up, like, you might call me on my shit. Like, you might be like, I see you, and like, I know you, and I see what you're projecting, but I also want to call you into being the whole you. There's feedback. When I'm in a real relationship, I can get real feedback and I can integrate a whole sense of self. But when there's this opportunity to manage a persona online, there is not that same accountability and feedback that we get in real relationship. And we could talk about the four key differences between the digital worlds and the real world, because I think it's important for us to see how these two dimensions are different and how they impact our very human needs, and how the online world cannot meet certain human needs that we need to have met in the real world through human contact, through human intelligence. And the influencer economy is, I don't want to make it bad, wrong, or say you shouldn't be an influencer or it's not worth pursuing a business online or using social media for certain purposes. But I do think we all need to call into question the impact of having an online personality on our own psychology. For example, am I thinking about everything in my real world as something that I need to capture and share and deliver to the digital world, so much so that I am not actually participating
You're not
in
living.
my real life? Yeah, I'm not living.
Talk about the Mona Lisa.
Ooh!
That example.
She's just like, zzz.
Yeah.
Wow, this was such an experience for me, because I mean, going to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa is like such I always imagined, what's that going to be like? When's that going to happen? What does she actually look like? And so I had been to Paris before, but I had never been to the Louvre. And so I was really excited a few summers ago. It was after I had worked at a public high school here in California for a year. And I really needed to kind of go away to find my voice. I had done so much like listening and caring and supporting for others that I was like, how am I going to write this book? I need to find my creative voice. I need to remember what I talked to Kate and Betsy about a year prior. And, why am I writing this book and how can I write it? And so I went to see the Mona Lisa, and it's the busiest part of the Louvre. It's where the most buzz and hubbub is. And it's perfectly lit with this like muted skylighting from above. So it's like this big cavernous room, and there's these, velvet scansions, so you can't get too close to Miss Mona. and so there's a clump. There's a clump of people, a big clump, maybe a couple hundred, 350 people maybe or more. And I'm waiting at the back, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go see the Mona Lisa. I want to go look at her and look at the painting and see it with my own eyes. And everyone has their phones out. Everyone in the clump has their phones out, and they're taking pictures, whether they're close to the scansion or they're way back. Everyone has their arms raised in the air and is tapping, tapping, clicking, clicking. And I feel irritable and like annoyed. I'm like, wait, I thought you go to see art to see it. Like, everyone's just taking pictures, and then the people at the front are all turned away from the Mona Lisa taking selfies. And I find that to be really annoying. And by the way, like, again, I'm not shaming anyone. I am totally that girl. I am totally that human who takes photos of things at times. But in this instance, I was really seeing the shadow, the collective shadow of like how we experience art. And so I was like, I am not taking my phone out. I really put myself on the pedestal. I was like, these people are peasants. They're obsessed with their phones, and I am going to look at art. And I waited patiently and really impatiently. I was like fuming. I was like, why isn't I wanted to yell. Wake up, everyone. Like, look at the painting of me. And I got to the front and center, and I like plant my feet down. There's like hundreds of people behind me and next to me. And I'm like, I am just going to look at her. And I noticed the black rolling hills behind her. I'd never seen those before. And then I started to feel guilty. Like, oh my God, I'm in the way because everyone's trying to get a selfie, and I'm kind of like in this prime center selfie spot right in front of her. And then I was in this conflict in my head, and I was like, no, you're not in the way. You're here looking at the art. Like, that's what we're all here to do. And then I really dug my feet in, and I was like, I am staying here, a little longer. And this is like, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And, and now I'm getting elbowed and bumped, and, someone's selfie arm is just kind of whacking me from one side and bumping me from another. And then I'm like, okay, like this feels rich. This feels like I'm meant to be experiencing this collective societal addiction, of which I am usually a part, but right now I'm trying to separate myself from it and see it from a different perspective. And then I was like, I'm not taking out my phone. I'm not taking out my phone. And I walk, there's like a little exit alongside the scansion. And then I start taking out my phone. And I start taking photos of all the people taking photos of her because I kind of wanted to remember the moment. And then I was like, okay, this is funny because I'm kind of doing the thing that I didn't want to do. And then I was like, okay, but that's just me taking photos of them. And then I walked to the back behind everyone, and I took my phone out and I zoomed in on the Mona Lisa, and I took a photo, and I was like, wow, it's like this inescapable
Couldn't leave
desire.
without doing it.
Yeah. Like I can't separate myself from this. I am a part of it, but what does it mean to see it? And what does it mean to identify addiction, but not judge the people and the human beings who are a part of it? And also to not separate myself from it because I too am a part of this. And it just kind of felt like this perfect metaphor for the whole collective conundrum.
Yeah.
that story. And the other one that I loved while you were in the process of writing the book was when you were in France in that chateau and that you're like writing and there was an AI conference and like they broke and all these AI people start walking down. Tell about that because I love that part.
Oh my gosh, that was really, that felt like such a kismet, but like perfectly annoying situation, because I was at this artist residency for 5 weeks, and I'm in a chateau in France. It was built in the 1600s. It's like for me to go and write and to connect to the book and to reflect and really, really make some progress on the writing and get some chapters over to my publisher. So it was really an important time. And the first week I was kind of settling in and had procrastinated on my writing a bit, but I was just kind of like landing and getting oriented. And then the second week I'm like, okay, like I am ready to write. Like this is going to be my week. And the global AI summit was held in Paris, and they did a decompression at the chateau that I was just starting to feel this kind of sense of peace in. And so like 40, 50, maybe even 60 people who are talking about AI, who run companies that are wanting, it was mostly like a crowd. I think it was a crowd really of all people, but there were a number of people who wanted to kind of define AI ethics and do things, create companies and initiatives in an ethical, like human-centered way. And I'm sure there's tons of just like technologists and capitalists and just like people kind of pulsing on that conversation. But it had a little bit of a tech bro energy.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of a tech bro energy. There were a lot of scientists and people kind of like yelling and I remember, I don't write about this in the book, and I probably should have, but this will be a special for Tender Wild listeners.
Yay.
There were two salons next to each other. There was like the main salon with this big fireplace, and all the AI kind of conference peeps were in there. And then there was this mid salon where I taught a yoga nidra class. And I called it the technology of the heart.
Oh.
And we did it right next. This wasn't really intentional, but it ended up happening. We did it right next door to the AI slideshow salon. Right next door. Like
you can't make this up.
No.
You cannot make this up.
And we're chanting Om, and we're chanting Om and feeling the resonance of the heart chakra and like really like feeling the technology of the human heart and body. And they're laughing at our Oms, just because I think it was like, loud during a presentation. So they're kind of like giggling and it just felt really rich to have these two things happening side by side. But what I came to learn, and what my friend Thomas said to me, he's an artist. And so there was kind of this artist technologist tension happening that week. And he said, no, we need to be a part of these conversations, because if artists and humanists are not in the room, even if we don't want to have these conversations, if we're not in that room speaking from our values, speaking from our perspective, then what gets built is going to get built without our perspective, without our values.
Oh, that's so true.
You need to show up for this conversation, Shannon. You need to be a part of it. You need to reckon with it. And that's what led to the chapter that you're referencing, AI and the self, and really exploring not necessarily using AI or not using AI, but understanding. That was my beginnings of exploring how an artificial intelligence can impact human psychology and human relationships.
Yeah.
Well, I loved how that led to that the awareness around that in such a juxtaposition. So thank you for sharing that special part that was not in the book.
Yeah.
So tell us about, we've talked about the problem. We've kind of circled around the issue. What are some things that you have tried and done that you can share with our listeners that are ways to create more awareness around our use,
Yeah. How did you detox?
Yeah.
Because I think you went through a whole detox period. And I love too that we've been talking about the anger that you felt as well, watching other people's addiction and other people's selfies. Like there was a purging of frustration and anger too. So Yeah. Solutions in like your process of how you
Yeah.
detoxed.
Yeah. Well, and all of this, being angry is a good sign, I think,
Mhm.
because
Agreed.
when we're in the normalization,
You
we
don't see
can't
the problem.
see the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why the first section of the book, The Power in Your Hands, is reckoning. Because there is a reckoning, and that's an internal reckoning, and it's a relational reckoning, and it's a societal communal reckoning. And then the second section of the book is remembering. And that's these practices of, you could call them digital detoxes, you could call them experiments, which is what I like to call them, because I think that technology addiction, and this is kind of sad to say, but it is, as far as addictions go, it's kind of closest to a food addiction, an eating disorder. And oftentimes in eating disorder communities and in Overeaters Anonymous, OA, they'll talk about how, with alcohol, you can give up alcohol and survive without it. With food, you have to find a way to be in right relationship with food. And I mean, technology is not quite that. You could find a way to live without technology. And in our society,
Pretty
it's
hard.
Yeah.
it's very, very, very hard. And we need to find a way to be in, most of us need to find a way to be in right relationship with technology, which means we need to reckon. And I find that experiments and experiences, and the research supports this as well, is doing experiments of going offline. We could talk about this till the cows come home. I have tons of research I could share from the Societal Addiction by Design chapter, and you could read books by Cal Newport and Johann Hari and Jonathan Haidt about what's happening to us. And knowledge is important, but knowledge alone will not save us. I cannot tell you the addictive, crazy things I have done with all the knowledge that I've gotten and still been at square one with my smartphone. So experiences. If you want to change a habit, then you must change your habit. Our neurophysiology and our neuropsychology is developed through new actions and new behaviors. So let's practice. And I like to think of this as a yoga practice. You don't just go to a yoga practice once and then you're like a yogi with this deep familiarity with your yoga postures. No, you go again and again and again, or if it's physical therapy, with getting offline, we need to be in a practice of remembering what it feels like in our bodies to slow down and embrace slowness and regulate to a nervous system that's not digitized. These phones, they impact our sympathetic nervous system. We are going through fight or flight responses in relationship to them. They are asking us to move faster and do more. And so whether it's 2 hours that start your day, or 1 hour, if that sounds like too much, or, I guide people through this process called Sacred Slow, which is a 40-hour digital fast of going offline to just remember what it's like to sleep for 2 nights and spend one whole luxurious day with no technology. I mean, you can drive your car or something like that, but no like computer or phone. And so that's basically what I've done. I've done 45 days of the flip phone before. And I wrote out all my GPS directions by hand when I had to go places.
I had to laugh because you and my dad are the only two people I know with flip phones. My
And
dad didn't give it up.
now I have the Light Phone 3, which is amazing. This is I've been using the Light Phone 3 since November of last year.
What is the Light Phone 3?
Oh my gosh, it is a high-tech, I call it a high-tech, low-tech dumb phone. It is a non-smartphone developed by a company called the Light Phone in Brooklyn. The founder, Joe Hollier, graciously endorsed The Power in Your Hand. He's amazing, amazing guy. They've been developing this technology for over a decade. And the Light Phone 3 is an incredible phone that uses Kindle Ink technology. So there's no color, there's no apps, there's no internet, but you have everything you need from GPS to notes to phone and text to you can add music like an old school iPod.
Oh, wow.
And you can even listen to podcasts if you want.
Wow.
And it's an incredible way for me to have a boundary and a protection. And this is what I played with writing the book, is how to create boundaries that nurture and protect my creative life and my mind.
Yeah.
Because in Buddhist practice, my friend Elena Brower, I don't know if you've had her
Yeah, I know
on
Elena.
the show.
No, we should have her on.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should.
she's great.
You totally, I can connect you if you need a reconnect there. She just came out with a book about her Buddhist practice at Upaya Zen Center called Hold Nothing. And she talks about, I interviewed her here in Ojai when the book came out, and she talked about building a mind you can trust. Last week, I did a sacred slow for 40 hours. It actually was more like 32 to 35. Full transparency. That was my time. And I remember waking up without my phone, doing the dishes. Then I had the thought, oh, I'll take the trash out. The trash needs to be taken out. And usually I'm like, I have to take the trash out. That's so annoying. I have so much to do. I need to check my email. But because I had nothing to do on this day of sacred slow,
Speaking of trash.
Okay, this is now a school bus. We got through the trash truck. Y'all, this is a real podcast.
This is
It is
Okay,
lots of
sorry, I
fun.
just had to say that. Go back to
Thank
taking
you.
out the trash.
Yes, I had the thought I'm going to take out the trash. And then this weird thing happened where I felt joy of getting to take out the trash. This is not normal for me, y'all. This is weird. And then I felt this additionally weird thing where I enjoyed taking out the trash. And then I just was like, I was so kind of giggling watching this whole process because I'm like, this is so directly connected to digitization and how my phone-based life makes me irritable about living my real life.
Because there's so much to do. There's so much to do. You just created a bunch of space for yourself. So because there was way more space, you could even be present and taking out your garbage. Right? I think
Building a
that's
mind we can trust.
exactly.
That I can actually have a thought and then do a thing without 35 things making me forget about. How many times have I forgotten about the trash? Because I'm just moving too fast and calling that real life.
Yeah.
We don't have to be moving as fast as we're moving. We've been trained, our nervous systems have been trained to co-regulate
with
to
phone.
technologies.
It's crazy.
Yes.
So we're hyper vigilant all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Narrow focus, right? It's like that sympathetic nervous system narrows the focus.
Like our whole world is on a screen.
Yeah.
Versus being able to expand it out and actually see what's really out there, including the trash, and find joy in that.
Can I share one other story? Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was at this cafe. I did this 2 weekends in a row. So I did a sacred slow the weekend before, and I went to this cafe, and this guy sat next to me. And normally, if I'm being fully honest, if I'm having a digital day, I kind of get annoyed by people sometimes if they like strike up a conversation because it's like I'm thinking and I'm busy texting with other people. I have things to do. I'm busy. But on this day, and I talk about this in the book, how when I spend periods of time offline, I become a better person and I become a citizen of the moment. And on this day, this man, he brought a physical Sunday Times newspaper. And I felt jealous and I felt longing. I was like, oh, I want that newspaper. And then he, after 20 minutes or so, he said, the great thing about bringing a newspaper to a cafe is after you read it, you can share it with people. And he passed it to me. And then I started reading it. So now we're reading a physical newspaper together, co-regulating. And then we get into this discussion for 30, 40 minutes, and we're talking about all sorts of topics. And I have nowhere to go. I'm not in a rush. I'm not rushing to get back to my phone, which is this subtle unconscious prioritization that kind of lingers in the background of my psyche that I notice. And all that I am there to do is connect with this person and to enjoy the quality of presence. And I think the reason I'm telling these stories is it's so easy to slip into forgetting. And I think the task is remembering through experiences of getting offline, whatever that looks like for you.
It sounds like heaven to me.
It
But
does.
Kate knows I have a very challenging relationship. I
Yeah.
just don't like it. I don't want to be on it. I don't want to check things. Have always been, you know, it's a dark hole for me. So these 40 hours, I'm like, sign me up.
I
That
know.
sounds like heaven to me. But is it hard? Like when you first started to do it, was it hard? And now have you grown into appreciating it, or I'm curious.
Yeah, I would love to do this with both of you. It's the hardest part is the getting ready for it.
Mm.
For me, it doesn't mean that there aren't like anxieties and challenges that can come up for people in the experience. Most of what I've heard from people is how amazing it goes. And there's moments of like kind of boredom that goes into like more boredom. And it can kind of be challenging to be like, well, what do I do next? Like, do I read some more? Do I go on a walk? Do I pop by my friend's house? Should I bake a cake? Like, but usually those things people tend to just figure out and then get a lot of joy from the spontaneity development of the day. The hardest part is, who do I need to communicate with? And what are the attachment related social anxieties that come up? Because going offline for 32 to 40 hours is a radical act and requires, often for most people, some kind of like relational communication, setup, managing expectations of others, maybe even, I think often in preparing people to go offline, it's like creating a safety plan for a client who's experiencing a potential crisis. How do we safety plan so that mostly so, yes, if an emergency happens, you're prepared, or if someone needs to reach you, there's some kind of way to do it through your social network or otherwise. But mostly, it's so that your nervous system can be at ease during your day. In the book, we talk about it as a day out of time. And that I think is the hardest part, but it's also the most rewarding part, because if you go through that initiation of getting your affairs in order, you really can unplug and enjoy the benefits. And also, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all an experiment, so you can see where you might mix or mess something up. And then that's where it's like, how do we hold ourselves accountable to our intentions? We have clear accountability and boundaries, but we also have accountability with grace and practice self-compassion. If you need to like I decided I wanted to FaceTime my dad. And I was like, well, and I struggle with sometimes in the middle of the week calling my parents for like a deep catch up, because they're on a different time zone, and my like work day flow might not coincide with when they're available. And I'm so busy sometimes that I don't really feel like I have the bandwidth for like a longer conversation. So for me, I sat with myself and I said, is turning on your iPhone, because I have an iPhone that connects to Wi-Fi, to FaceTime my dad, is that a human use of technology that can be a part of my sacred slow? Or is this me trying to distract myself and kind of cheat the rule? And I just went on my phone. I just FaceTimed my dad. We had a beautiful conversation. And then I turned it right back off as soon as I finished that conversation. And so these are the ways that we can be in right relationship, where we're making choices that are serving our humanity rather than the addictive tendencies.
Love it.
I do too. It's
Yeah.
like you had intuition about talking to your dad, and you were intentional about how you use technology to do that, instead of just
Yeah.
going back
And
to it.
it's not that it's all black or white. It's
No.
not all bad or good. And so this conversation is about our discernment.
Mhm.
When is it going to be in the best interest of us to use it? And then when are we just getting tugged into the black hole?
Yeah.
I'm so curious for the two of you, like what works for you, or like how technology impacts the communication between the two of you, or if you've had any success with like offline time.
Well, retreats that we go on together often are offline times. And I was just going to mention earlier that I think travel for me actually becomes my permission giving to myself.
Mm. Mm.
People know I'm gone, they know I'm traveling, they're not expecting anything. So somehow, because of my probably codependency, I'm like, well, I'm free. I'm free right now. So I can be free from technology. So I feel like we've experienced that
Yeah.
together.
And one of my favorite times is riding in an airplane because no one can contact me. And I find I clean up my desktop or I watch a movie or I just look out the window. And so I think all along, and maybe because I'm not a technology native and I'm such a depth person, and I think my biggest frustration is not depth. It's
Mhm.
so surface.
Mhm.
And for me, that is not how I work in relationship. It's not how I view the world. And so this just has never felt very true to me. And so I already struggle with it, but then also know it's the way people connect and promote their work. And so it's a constant challenge for me to figure out how much to be in it and how much not to be in it.
I have to say, I do love getting Betsy's voice memos because
Mhm.
I
Mm.
think that for you feels more
Yeah.
personal.
Instead of texting. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I find that to be, I feel
Mhm.
special when I get one of her voice memos because I'm like, oh, she
Oh.
wanted to talk to me versus
Yeah.
text. And so I think you're really good at finding ways to use it very intentionally. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
I
that's our brains developed for up to 2 million years. The human brain has been developing to crave tone of voice, which exists in a voice memo, which exists in a podcast, facial expression, and body language. And so when we are having interactions and connections in a comment section or in a DM or in a text, there is no tone of voice, there's no facial expression, there's no body language, and then we don't feel on a biological level. The way that our brains developed, our brains are reaching for that sense of completion and true connection, and it's not being facilitated by this technology. And I think voice memos can be a way to kind of use technology in a human way. And they're also not synchronous, they're asynchronous. So it's just kind of also important to have synchronized connection as
Yeah.
well.
Totally. Totally.
Well, I have loved this conversation.
Yeah, it's so timely. And I
is.
think everybody needs it because, as you said, everyone's got a smartphone and we're all working out a relationship. In fact, this morning I told my 14-year-old daughter and my 17-year-old son that I was talking to you today about smartphone use. And they both rolled their eyes at me like, oh no, what's mom going to come home with
Oh.
tonight? But I feel like I received some big nuggets from you that I want to share with them because I think we all can have healthier, happier lives when we're more engaged with the world around us versus that small screen.
Yeah. And I just want to say that I felt after reading your book that we're on this precipice. And I think if we think of it as we're making choices to reclaim and hang on to our humanity and our humanness, it's not about lack and giving up. It's actually about hanging on to our human experience. And so for me, it's kind of a mindset shift of maybe it's not giving it up. Maybe it's actually hanging on to something that I don't want to lose.
Totally. Totally. Yes, that we can actually have agency and choice around valuing our humanity, rehumanization, and human intelligence. Shout out to HI, that our bodies are incredible technologies of human evolution and the evolution of nature. And there is a wisdom and intelligence. And our smartphone use, social media decreases empathy. There is a numbing effect to digitization. And that's not, I'm not saying technology, just like you're mentioning, Kate, it's not bad. I'm not anti-technology. Like, I'm pro-technology. I loved technology. And if we're not putting humans at the center of the value system, if we're not holding high our humanity, then something will be lost. There is something that needs to be protected here. And I think our humanity is it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we encourage our listeners to pick up this book, The Power in Your Hands. Thank you, Shannon, for spending time with us. It was so great to connect again, and loved watching this journey that you've been on to bring this to life and help inform us and really make us think.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. And you're such a good human. As we're talking about humanity,
Yes, you are.
you just exude like such, a deep, I feel so connected to just this conversation. And I think that's what we're all out here to help save, is this sense of humanity and this sense of, to go back to our very, very start of this conversation, our essence, our rewilding, that sense of who we really are, and returning to that. So thank you for giving us yet another story about how we can rewild and reconnect to our essence and smart use of these technologies.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure. And this book, I am really actually deeply proud of this book, because I think it will move people's minds to wonder about how changes could begin to be built into their lives. And to me, that would be the biggest success. So I think it's a book worth having if you're listening and you feel inspired by this conversation. And thank you, Betsy and Kate, so much for having me back on Tender Wild, and just your beautiful presence and resonance. And you're just two amazing people to talk to. So I feel so grateful for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.